maybe you don't own a home, or you're looking to get into real estate investing and maybe buy a rental property, but you're looking at these crazy house prices, you're looking at inflation, and you're thinking like, houseway, how am I going to be able to afford a mortgage in this economy? Well, house hacking may be the perfect solution for you. Hi, and welcome to the Passive Income and Chill podcast. I'm Nana, and here we talk about and implement all things real estate, entrepreneurship, and passive income. I created and grew a digital products business to 6 figures, and I am growing my passive income real estate portfolio. Here on this channel, my goal is to share what I know and help others do the same. So for years, I was actually doing this strategy, but with renting. So when I was in law school way back in the day, I used to, love renting out a big house and living in one room, and then I would re-rent out the rest of the rooms to other students, other young people. This is when I was living in DC, and I would charge them rent, and I would basically be living almost rent-free. So it was fantastic, especially as a student, but it would have been even better if I had owned the property, right? Because let me tell you something, this was back in the 2010s, and this was in DC before it really popped. Like, if I had owned those properties, the equity I would have gained in them, I would have been a bajillionaire. And so not only would I have been living rent/mortgage free, but I also would have built a lot of equity. So I want you to learn from my mistakes, and I want to talk about how you can do this now, no matter what stage of life you are, depending on your situation, to get into a property for a lot less money. And if you're interested in learning how to buy your first or next rental property with my step-by-step method, go ahead and get my free Rentals Made Simple guide in the description box below to learn how to build your own small but mighty real estate empire. Okay, so first, what the heck is house hacking? I'm sure you've probably heard of it. A lot of people often talk about house hacking when they're referring to, buying a multi-unit, living in one unit and then renting out the other. So maybe you have a duplex, you live on one side and you rent out the other side to help cover your mortgage. But you can actually house hack with single family properties as well. And the whole goal of house hacking is to basically have whoever is renting from you cover a good amount of your mortgage or your rent so that you can have less expenses. So why would you want to house hack? Well, first, housing is one of our biggest expenses, no matter who you are, for the most part. For example, let's say your mortgage or your rent is about $2,000 a month, and you rent out one of your rooms, let's say you're in a 2-bedroom, for $1,000 a month. You have automatically reduced your cost of living by $1,000. And if you have multiple rooms, maybe you are able to rent out each one of those rooms, so you could cover your entire mortgage or rent and even maybe make a little cash flow depending on how many rooms you have, how much you're charging, the location you're in, etc., etc. There are also so many other benefits. For one, when you house hack, you're buying as an owner-occupant. So you can get owner-occupant rates from the banks and lenders versus, if you're buying as an investor, as a second property, or even as, just your first investment property, you're usually going to have to put a lot more down. When you buy as an owner-occupant, you can often use first-time homebuyer programs or just primary residence programs like the FHA loan, which only requires you to put down 3.5% versus 10% or 20% on an investment property where you wouldn't be living in the home. You can also use first-time homebuyer programs that require even less of a down payment. So for instance, NACA, N-A-C-A, is a nationwide program that gives you down payment assistance money. It also often has much lower interest rates than the going rate. And there are even some programs out there that only require 1% down as your down payment. So you can look up specific programs for your specific city. And again, NACA is one that is nationwide, so you can find that wherever you live. And of course, I'm mainly talking about single family homes, but if you decide to use this strategy with a multi-unit, the lender can even take the estimated prospective rent of the other units to go towards your qualifying income to help offset the cost of the loan, which is a huge deal. And getting an interest rate around 1% on a property in this day and age is bananas and fantastic. I mean, my sister and brother-in-law actually used a similar type of program when they first bought their first property. And so their mortgage was phenomenal. And this is the power of being able to use some of these programs and still get into a property, whether it's a single family or a multi-unit. So you want to consider the type of property that you're going to start looking for based on your specific situation. So this is going to be based on what your income is, how much you have in savings, the type of program that you utilize in terms of loans, and also based on your goal. Is this going to be a long-term property that you live in for a while, or is this short-term just to get into the real estate market? Maybe you're just trying to get in where you fit in and just get your foot in the door with real estate. So maybe you're going to buy a condo or a townhouse or a starter single family home. And just remember, when it comes to condos and townhouses and even single families, make sure you take a look at how much those condo fees are going to be, because they're my least favorite thing ever. They are often quite high, as well as your HOA fees, and include all of that in your calculations on how much you're going to be paying every single month. Or maybe you are ready to start with a bigger property, a multi-unit, which could be a duplex, a triplex, which is 3 units, or a fourplex, which is 4 units. And I only include 1 to 4 units because under 4 units and less, you can get those owner-occupant rates. Anytime you start going over 4 units and start at 5 or more, then you're going to have to use a conventional commercial style loan, which is going to cost you way more in terms of interest. So a house is typically going to cost less and be easier to get into, but you do have to take into consideration how comfortable will you be with other people living with you in your space, shared areas, all of that good stuff. Keep that all in mind. Like, keep in mind your personality, where you are in your stage of life, how big is this property, are you going to have enough space? Just think about it long term. But remember, you're just trying to get into the real estate game. So that's something to think about. You also want to consider the amount of rental income you'll get once you move out of the property, right? Because our goal is to eventually maybe do this again with another unit or move on to your primary residence and have this as your rental property. So you want to make sure that the amount of rent you're going to get once you move out is going to at least cover your mortgage, your principal and interest for the mortgage payment, as well as your taxes and insurance. Because if it doesn't at least cover that, you're going to be in the red and you're actually going to be losing money and paying to have this rental property, and that is not the goal. So you want to at least cover the mortgage with that rental payment. And ideally, you want to cash flow some money and have some additional passive income coming in. That's my goal. But having this rental property, it's going to generally appreciate over time, and you were able to get into the real estate market using this method. So who should house hack? Personally, I think everyone can benefit from using this strategy, but here are some things to consider. You want to think about the possibility of living with other people, especially if it's a single family home, and even if it's a multi-unit, you're sharing walls with your tenants, and possibly having your tenants know who you are and all that good stuff. You also want to consider being a landlord, because you have to be willing to be a landlord with this situation. Whether you're just renting rooms or have a multi-unit, you need to take on that responsibility of collecting rent, meeting your tenants' needs, and taking care of the property. I personally prefer, if possible, to buy properties that are in decent condition, good condition, so there's usually less maintenance. And if I'm buying something that needs a little bit of work, I want to take care of all of that up front, because then you have less maintenance usually on the back end. But this is something you need to consider strongly, whether or not you are comfortable and want to be a landlord. And then you also need to consider your personal situation. So maybe you need to think about, are you single? Are you a family? Do you have little ones? Are you going to be comfortable having strangers in your home if it's a single family? Do you have enough space if you are a larger family and you're living in a multi-unit? Take all those things into consideration for your personal situation. So once you've gotten your house hack property, what is your next step? First, you want to live in the property for at least 1 year because of something called seasoning when it comes to loans. So the type of loans that I talked about earlier, you typically, because they are owner occupancy loans, you have to live in the property for at least a year. Otherwise, you will get yourself in some trouble, and you don't want that. So live in the property for at least a year, or you can choose to live in it longer and stack your paper, grow your equity, and that money is something that you can use to buy your next property and keep the cycle going, right? Rinse and repeat. You can also move after a year and just turn that into your rental property. So you can move into another single family home or buy a multi-unit, live in one, rent out the others. Or if you stacked up enough paper, depending on how long you live there and how much equity you have, you can pull some of that money out and maybe buy 2 properties. One is going to be your primary residence and one is going to be another rental property for you. It all depends on your situation, how much money you save, how much equity you have, and what your goals are. So again, if you're interested in my step-by-step method on how to start and grow your real estate empire, go ahead and check my free Rentals Made Simple guide in the description box below. And now that you know this house hacking strategy as a way of getting into real estate a little more easily, go ahead and check out this next video, because once you pair it with what you just learned, you are going to be unstoppable. Bye.